In March 2022, I matched into psychiatry residency. 3 months later, I left medicine potentially forever with a risky backup plan. After grinding 10 years of pre-med, college, grad school, medical school to get those two huge letters, MD, after my name, I quit. And the craziest part, looking back now in 2025, it was both the riskiest and the most important decision I've ever made. I haven't really shared this story outside of close family and friends, because if I could teleport myself back to my 28-year-old self and make that decision again, I don't know if I would. So if you're feeling trapped in a perfect career, but in your gut it feels wrong, whether that's medicine, law, tech, or whatever traditional profession you're in, I hope that my story will be insightful. And at the end, I want to share why 2025 might be the perfect time to start something new without taking a huge risk like I did. But to really understand why, we have to rewind the story to 2018, the day I got accepted into medical school. When I got that acceptance, it was the happiest day of my life. My brother cried, my mom cried, I definitely cried. It felt like becoming an Avenger or something. But a few years into training, something felt off. You know that feeling when you go to try a new restaurant that everyone's been hyping up, but after you take the first few bites, you're like, well, this is kind of mid. That's what medical school felt like for me. But when you tell people that about medical school, they kind of make you feel guilty. They shame you. They're like, dude, shut up, just suck it up. There are people who would kill to be in the position that you are. And they're not wrong. So I did what any good Asian son would do. I shoved those feelings down as far as I could and convinced myself that I really wanted to be a doctor. And that maybe if I just kept saying that to myself, the spark would come back. But sometimes fate has a funny way of revealing what you really want. And for me, that came during the global crisis of 2020, the pandemic. Like most of the world, I was locked down, school went virtual for 3 months, and it was a strange but perfect time for my brother and I to finally start the YouTube channel that we've always wanted to. He wanted to make educational videos for his patients because he was already a practicing doctor, and I just needed a creative outlet to maybe make some music, who knows. But I never would have expected what happened next. I got hooked. While I was supposed to be studying medicine, I found myself staying up late to edit videos and create content. And when school eventually came back, I would spend all of my time in the hospital writing scripts or trying to think of the next video idea I'd do. By the time graduation came around in 2022, our YouTube channel had generated almost $100,000. Obviously split between 2 people, and after taxes and everything, it wasn't exactly money to retire on or anything. But here's what kind of broke my brain. I did this part-time, mostly for fun, while I was a full-time medical student. And it's because of that mindset shift that when the match day emails came out, where I was gonna find out where I was gonna spend the next 4 years of training, the victory dance that everyone else felt instead hit me like a sucker punch. And so quick context for anyone who's not in medicine, match week is like the medical school season finale. On Monday of match week, you find out if you matched anywhere in the country. And on Friday, you learn where you're actually going to spend those next 3 to 7 years of your life with medical training, depending on which specialty you go into. And for 99.9% of medical students, that Monday is pure relief because it means you finished. You're going to be a doctor. I remember sitting there, staring at my phone at this acceptance to a psychiatry program, but I wasn't feeling the excitement that everyone else was. I felt dread. I don't want to do this. And so the next hard thing was I had to tell somebody. And the first people I told were, of course, my parents. But trying to explain that to Vietnamese refugee parents who sacrificed everything for their son to become a doctor, who fled their country because of war, that conversation went just as well as you'd expect. I am an Asian American. My parents came to the States. They literally had nothing. They worked multiple jobs. They learned a new language. They built their life from scratch. And so when I got into medical school, it wasn't just my triumph. It wasn't just my victory. It was also theirs. They told all their friends, all my uncles, all my aunties, like, oh my gosh, Hui's gonna be a doctor. Hui's my Vietnamese name, by the way. And here I was, standing at the finish line, going to break their hearts and tell them that, no, I don't want to be a doctor. I'm gonna be a YouTuber. No one in their right mind would do that. When I told them I didn't want to do residency, they freaked out, which was, let's be honest, completely justified. Because to them, the numbers, the security doesn't lie, even if it doesn't tell the whole story. In 2024, the average US physician makes around $209,000 a year. That's life-changing money for people, including my family. Most people just see that number and they get fixated on it. But if you look past the end result, what most people don't see is that to get there, you need to invest a lot. 4 years of college, paying tuition, 1 to 2 years of post-bac or master's if you're not that competitive, which you're also paying more tuition. And on top of that, 4 years of medical training, of course, paying more tuition during that time. Afterwards, you spend about 4 to 7 years of residency training where you make about $60,000 a year and you work 80 plus hours a week. And for all of those years, you have to move again and again, wherever medicine sends you across the country. You drag along your relationships, your mental health, and your family. Everyone shares that burden with you. Now, our YouTube business made chump change compared to 2 doctor salaries, right? Not even close. But it was proof of something I realized was much more valuable and important to me. Freedom to try and create something meaningful for myself. And so after mulling over this decision for who knows how many months, talking it through with everybody, I finally said, fuck it, I quit along with my brother. Call me stupid because it was a very impulsive and risky decision to quit, but here we are. Ironically, the reason I felt confident betting on myself was because of medical training. Any meaningful transformation takes at least 4 to 5 years of focused effort. There are no shortcuts, there are no hacks, just fucking hustle. And so I asked myself, what if I took those same 4 to 5 years that I was going to spend in residency, working 80 plus hours a week for $60K a year, and instead invested that energy and effort into building something of my own? And I wasn't starting from scratch. It was risky, but this YouTube channel had potential. This online business thing could work. And sure, the stats aren't great. I know my mom pulled them up many times. 4 and 5 businesses failed within the first 5 years, while almost 100% of residents actually become doctors. But for the first time in my life, I felt something I hadn't felt in medicine for many years. I felt hopeful and I felt a sense of purpose. In my final year of medical school, every morning I was waking up at the butt crack of dawn to work on YouTube before going into the hospital. When I got home, I wasn't studying, it was YouTube. When my friends or my attendings would ask me about medicine, I'd have this, copy-paste textbook answer about, I want to help people and make a difference and, serve as a psychiatrist in the community or something. But when they asked me about content creation or entrepreneurship, I couldn't shut up about it. My eyes would light up and I could talk for hours about all these cool things I wanted to try. And it was just so much more energizing and it was so much more authentic for me to be sharing those aspects of my life. I think it was a Tim Ferriss podcast I was listening to where he posed a really insightful question to one of his guests. It was something along the lines of, if there are 2 paths in front of you, which one would you regret more in 20 years not having tried? That's the test, isn't it? Which path makes you come alive? Which one is going to make you talk about it nonstop to anyone who'll listen, anyone who even won't listen? And for me, 9 times out of 10, it was entrepreneurship. Now, here's where things get really interesting, especially if you're watching this in 2025, because the rules of the entrepreneurship game have completely flipped. 3 years ago, I had to make a binary choice, go all in on medicine or all in on entrepreneurship. But we're living in a time now where AI and technology have advanced so far that they can handle almost all the grunt work that used to take creators and entrepreneurs years to learn and build systems around. I like to think of it like Solo Leveling, the anime, if you haven't seen it, fantastic show by the way, where they can do like this mana assessment. You can test out entrepreneurship without quitting your day job or without sacrificing the entire lifestyle that you currently live. And it's that reason why, like I said at the beginning of the video, I don't know if I had to make that same decision again today, that I would make the same one. And the best part is that if it doesn't work out, you can just stop, right? There's no harm, no foul done. But if it does excite you and you do gain momentum and you build traction and you fall in love with it, you can decide for yourself when and if you want to take that plunge. That is a luxury that I didn't have a few years ago. I'm not gonna lie, I do miss some aspects of medicine. I actually really enjoyed talking to patients and using my doctor skills. 3 years later now, I've definitely lost a lot of my skills and diagnostic training. To have that be an option now, to potentially do both and try it out, that's insane. And it's a reality that we're living in today. And if you're smart, I would really recommend just to think about it that way. I'm not going to lie and say I've never had my doubts. Of course I have. But there's this quote that I really loved that I thought about deeply when making this decision, and it still drives me today. Of all the words of tongue and pen, the saddest are, it might have been. In 2025, you don't have to be stuck. You don't have to quit with debt and loans and move back into your parents' office and bootstrap for 2 years as a doctor like I did and try your best to make it work. That's how I felt for almost an entire year after I quit. I doubted myself and severely underestimated how hard it would be to build a business. You can start small, self-educate on YouTube, read some books, follow creators who inspire you, and learn strategies and tools that we didn't have a few years ago. And you can shortcut the process of building something meaningful on your own terms. That's my story. It's a weird one, but I'm glad it's out there now. And if it helps even one person think a little bit differently about what life can be, I'll be happy. And if you're on the fence right now about your current situation and you want to try your hand at creating about this entrepreneurship stuff with no risk, then I definitely would check out this video here. I break down the exact process for how to start building your creator business while still working your 9 to 5.